The year of 2023 saw massive growth in the furry convention scene. Let's dive into the data and see just how massive the growth rates were. I wanted to go over this as a little bit of positivity with regards to how the fandom's growing, and it's not all doom and gloom because furry Twitter and all that, so I want to give it a read. But yeah, this is a little furry history blog. Haven't really heard of this till about a week ago when this article was posted, but this is a good read. I highly recommend reading it yourself if you would like, or if you want to follow along with me, you can. I'm just going to be doing some, like, I guess delving into some of the information and like giving some like input on it, if that makes sense. But I'll be reading through this, so feel free to follow along if you would like. I love giraffes, me too. But looking back at furry conventions in 2023 turned out to be an incredible year for furry convention growth, with many conventions seeing unprecedented growth rates. Midwest Fur Fest was the largest furry convention yet again, with an impressive 15,547 attendees. I did a video on this. It's quite impressive that furry conventions are getting up to this point, which, you know, kind of makes sense with MFF being like one of the largest furry conventions out there. It was kind of like split between Anthrocon for a little bit, from what I remember earlier that year. Like Anthrocon had like 3 more attendees compared to the biggest furry convention at the time, which was Midwest Fur Fest the year before. But now this year, like MFF blew it out of the water by adding, I think, like another 2,000 or 3,000 attendees, which is crazy. Like the fact that furry conventions are growing at this exponential of a rate is really insane. It's a good thing. I'm glad to see it, especially after, you know, all that we've been through in, you know, the past 3 years, give or take, plus 4 years at this point. So, you know, it's been a wild ride, but the fact that the fandom is still thriving is good to see. And the proof is in the analytics. They also, for the second time, managed to raise over $100,000 for their charity, joining the very impressive club of furry conventions that raised over $100,000 for their charity in 2023 was Furry Week in Atlanta, which saw a massive growth rate of 41.25% and joined the over 10,000 attendees club. That was another thing that I very much hyped up. FWA, I'm gonna be honest, it's one of my favorite conventions. It is probably my favorite furry convention, period. Like, every time I have been to FWA, it has been a banger of a time, no matter what. And, you know, obviously that's based on, like, the experiences, but I also factor in other things, like ease of access to food, transportation, going to and from the con. How expensive is it? I'm gonna be honest, FWA is probably one of the cheaper cons I've been to in recent last year, so there's that as well. But still, the fact that FWA, a con that, like, I think in recent years only gained like a level of popularity, has gotten to this point is pretty insane. But a growth rate of 41.25%, that is insane. That is crazy. Anthrocon held fast to its second largest furry convention title, also seeing a massive growth rate of 40.63%. Damn. But yeah, even Anthrocon 2 had a massive grow rate, which I actually, unfortunately, wasn't at Anthrocon this year. I know, a bit sad. Probably going to be planning to go. Last year, I didn't go to Anthrocon. This year, I would like to, but regardless. I didn't get to go to Anthrocon last year. I heard really good things about it. Granted, I've loved Anthrocon whenever I've gone. I just haven't really had the opportunity to go since 2019. So, you know, it's good to see that that con that is very special to me, that I really enjoy, is growing at a pretty good rate too. Like, this is a really impressive growth rate for a con. So yeah, furry is growing at a pretty rapid rate. Top 5 largest furry conventions in 2023. Midwest Fur Fest. Wait, Further Confusion had 5,000? I'm gonna be honest, I liked FC this last year. It was okay, but it didn't feel like 5,000 people were at that con. I don't know if it was just me. It definitely did not feel like 5,000 people were at that con, but FC has a good area, a good con. I enjoy it. I didn't go this year because money. But either way, let's keep reading. Like 2022, the top 5 largest conventions were all over 5,000 attendees. But in 2023, Megaplex also joined the above 5,000 attendees club. 17 conventions saw over 2,000 attendees. 47 conventions had 1,000 attendees or more in 2023, nearly doubling the number of furry conventions that achieved this in 2022. Which, that's also insane to have that attendance rate for conventions for this many, like nearly 50 conventions with over 1,000 attendees in 2023. That's wild. And you got to keep in mind, like, all of these conventions are in different areas of the country. And some people will, like, travel from a part of the country to another part of the country or outside of the country to these cons, like in Chicago, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Georgia, Texas, San Jose, California. These are all around the country. All these cons are around the country. So you just got to keep that in mind. All these cons, like, and so many more here, are scattered throughout. And the fact that they're still getting attendances of at least 1,000 people or more is insane. Because I remember when I went to my first, like, I guess small convention was like FurPoc, and that had been going for a while. And I think that just barely grazed over 1,000. I think it was like 1,400 or something attendees. And this is back in like 2018. It's just crazy to see so many cons that are able to pull off the 4-digit attendee. In 2023, by our count, 109 furry conventions took place. We did our best to get the attendance number for them all, but we were unable to get the attendance numbers for 27 of them. We will continue to try to get these numbers and all numbers we don't have and update our master spreadsheet linked at the end of the article if we get them. So I just want you to keep in mind, over 100 furry conventions took place this year, and 47 of them, about half of them, had over 1,000 attendees. I don't know about you, but that's kind of a really, really crazy ratio to have for attendance per convention. I mean, obviously, you know, it's not representative of like the average attendee per conventions, but that is genuinely like impressive. For like a sub-community like furry, where the main thing is just, you know, furry convention, like that's pretty wild. I'm really, really happy to see like that furry conventions are growing at this rate. Because I remember sometimes when I was in the fandom, like I'd have to wait like a few months far in between the next convention I'd go to because it was like the only accessible one. Nowadays, like I'm gonna be honest, like this year I could go to like there's conventions happening once a week or like once every other week. Like fucking FC happened a week ago. Last weekend. A&E's happening this weekend. I think there's another convention happening after that. And like, if I wanted to, like, I could go to some convention in February. There's definitely like a big convention in March with like Texas Furry Fiesta or like Fernal Equinox. Like there's so many cons going on where you really don't have to wait if you don't want to. There's so many of these happening compared to when I remember they were. 2023 saw the debut of 5 brand new furry conventions. These conventions were Porocon, I don't know how to pronounce that, Keep Tahoe Furry, Furcation Land, Las Vegas FurCon, and Nomadicon. See, remember that? Furcation Land? That was the big con that I remember started, I think, up in Maine. Let me see, where's Furcation Land? First year, 822 attendees, which I know, I think LVFC already started like a year before that, or maybe this year, I can't remember. Or this year it is, last year it started, can't remember. But Furcation Land and Las Vegas FurCon were the 2 I remember that started very, very recently. And like, Furcation Land still performed extremely well. I heard really good things about it. All my friends were like, why weren't you at Furcation Land? This con seems awesome. Why don't you go and hang out with us there? And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Maybe I will next time. Maybe I will. Porocon took place in Finland, and his 2024 iteration is scheduled to happen in May. We were unable to get any information on the 2023 Keep Tahoe Furry event, and it is unclear if it will be occurring again in 2024. Furcation Land in Portland, Maine, and Las Vegas FurCon in Las Vegas, Nevada happened on the same weekend and both pulled huge first-year convention numbers, solidifying both as new staple conventions in the respective areas. Just want you to keep a note of that. Let that sink in. But, so staple conventions in the respective areas. They luckily will not take place on the same weekend in 2024. Well, there you go. So I can attend. Well, I'm probably going to go to Furcation Land. I don't think I can do LVFC. I'd rather do TFF, so I'll probably do TFF instead. Nomadicon took place in Nashville, Tennessee. I've always wanted to visit Nashville. I've heard good things about it. And was an 18-plus convention, a concept that has developed over the last few years. They have not announced dates for 2024 yet. That's something I feel like we're going to see a lot more of, 18-plus furry conventions. Wait, isn't LVFC technically an 18-plus furry convention? Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it? It's 21. Oh, okay. Honestly, though, I feel like we're going to see a lot more 18-plus furry conventions. At least, if not, like, big furry conventions, then, like, furry events, if that makes sense. Which, like, I'm one for, like, allowing 18-plus events at cons as well. I think that's, like, really cool, having a time for it, you know, with, like, night markets and all that for, like, FWA and FC. I think that's really cool. I think that's a really good concept, having, like, a time where that's, you know, allowed is cool. But I also know some people just want to, like, chill around in a convention space in, you know, whatever I guess the attire is. So I guess the 18-plus conventions would accommodate for that, potentially. That's a whole conversation for later, too, by the way. I'm surprised there aren't more now. There probably will be. It's only a matter of time that people get beyond pissed from how the state of furry Twitter is, and just end up like going and making their own conventions for 18 plus stuff. Which, like, that whole conversation about like furry convention spaces, what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed at certain times, is a whole conversation to have. And I don't know if I really want to have that right now, because it's gonna it eat up like at least 2 hours worth of time. And I kind of want to do a video on it discussing it as is, because there are some like pros and cons to it. But at the same time, you know, we'll pin the whole topic and talk about it later. But for the sake of time, let's just keep going through this. So the new furry conventions from this year that were added, the 5 that were added, look to be going in a pretty good shape, at least for Furcation Land and Las Vegas FurCon, which I've heard very, very good things about both of them. So that's a good sign of conventions that are starting up, or like newer conventions. So it's exciting. The furry fandom has exploded in growth in the last decade. Many people finding and joining the fandom during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. Hey, see, I said the thing, and they mentioned it in the article. I said the thing. This absolutely was something that happened with, you know, people being inside and not being able to go anywhere. They're bound to go down the rabbit hole, find furries, and then some might really like furries. And so that's why furry conventions have, you know, exploded in attendance in this past year. Because, you know, it was building back up in, like, I think mid to late 2021. In mid to late 2021, like, furry conventions were just barely coming back. I remember, like, I went to Denver 2021, then BLFC, Anthro Northwest, and then MFF. And those were, like, the really big cons to get things, like, started, get the ball rolling with conventions being a thing again, since, like, a year and a half of no cons. And then 2022 was when things started actually like starting. And now 2023 is like kind of the point where things are like exploding from that initial growth and popularity of furry from 2021, you know, where things went from like just online, finding the fandom online, and then it kind of, I guess, related to IRL events. So yeah, it's just interesting to see that, you know, I was kind of right about that. A lot of furries became furries during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. It's just kind of how it is. It's more of an assumption, but it's definitely happened. Looking at the graphs of how that growth has affected furry conventions in 2023 is truly fascinating. Top 20 largest furry conventions as of 2023. So we look at here, the start of it. Okay. This was when I think furries started becoming, like, I guess more of a known thing online, if that makes sense. Like, this is when I learned about furries in, like, 2015. So furries became a mainstream thing. Granted, like, or not a mainstream thing. They became, like, discussed in the mainstream. Granted, a lot of the times it was with regards to, like, cringe culture and all that. It still brought awareness to furry, and that's why things kind of blew up into, like, 2019. Things were heading in a good direction. And then right here. But you have a few cons that made it, like Texas Furry Fiesta. I went to that right before, you know, the world fell apart. I will say that was a good send-off con. But then 2021, barely anything happened up until like a few, like Midwest Fur Fest, BLFC, Denver, I think Megaplex as well. What other ones were on here? Furrydelphia, and then Anthro Northwest? Yeah, Anthro Northwest, I think. Yeah, those are like a couple of the cons. I think I actually attended 3 of the 5. But then, you know, after 2021 into 2022, you see just this skyrocket of things kind of just going back to the way they were in 2019. And now 2023, like, things are shooting up a lot more than they were initially in 2019. So it just took a few years, but it's crazy to see how this graph has like grown. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media, with the internet, with a lot of this point of people perusing the internet, finding furry, and then things kind of opening back up and wanting to participate in the furry community IRL. So you have this shoot up here, and you're going to have a lot more of it in this next year. I can guarantee 2024 is going to have about the same attendance and reception as last year in terms of conventions. And I think, you know, more and more people are talking about it, and more people are able to attend. So you're going to have about, if not the same, maybe a little bit more than last year. So just thought I'd add that. The growth of a handful of the largest conventions was already trending upwards in a more exponential, nonlinear fashion, especially around 2015. So I kind of kind of made a point with 2015. This is when I learned about furry, and, you know, it skyrocketed. I think it had to do with internet influence. But since the break years conventions experienced as a result of COVID lockdown, the lines for many conventions have rocketed upwards. The above chart shows the largest conventions, but let's dive into the positive growth rates themselves from 2022 to 2023. Oh, these are just the growth rates, so okay. As you can see, we saw truly unprecedented growth all over the globe. A 10% growth rate from year to year had always been considered a very successful rate for a furry convention. With many conventions growing at much slower rates, to see this many conventions at well over 10% growth rate, let alone over 50% or over 100%, is wild. It is! It's crazy. I didn't even think of like this little statistic before from like years past, of like a 10% growth rate of furry conventions is considered, you know, healthy. But nowadays you're seeing like conventions that people are talking about more and more and are giving a good impression towards, like, are growing exponentially. And it's really, really fascinating to see. I'm glad to see that. The Asian furry community in general has become far more active of late, seeing massive growth not only in their furry conventions, but also in their fur meets and how their regional fandom has crossed significantly into other regions. Many other conventions are seeing more visitors from Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and the Americas every year, with far more overlap on social media communities as well. Interesting. I didn't actually take that into account, you know, with overseas furry conventions, especially the Asian furry community. I didn't actually know that this was like a booming thing. I've heard JMOF is a very, very good con, and I've wanted to attend that, but I didn't actually know how things were going with it. It's kind of good to see. It's very fascinating to see. The Canadian furry conventions have also seen massive growth, as there are far fewer across the vast country that can be found in the United States. But Canada has also seen massive spikes in regional furry populations similar to what the US has experienced. We are extremely excited to see what 2024 has in store for furry conventions. How many more new ones will spring up? Will any more furry conventions be able to raise more than $100,000 this year? Will any more conventions join the over 10,000 attendees club? How many more will breach 5,000 attendees? I think that's a good question. Honestly, if I were to give an estimate, I think 2023 was like probably like one of the big pinnacle years for furry convention growth. Not to say that I don't want to see it growing, like I obviously do, but I got to keep within reason of like how things are going now into 2024 and how predictions will be. I'm not really sure. My guess is I'd say another 2 more furry conventions are going to hit the 10,000 mark. I think maybe TFF. Maybe TFF. I would love to see TFF succeed. I would love to see TFF hit the 10,000 attendee mark. And other than that, there's already FWA, AC, and MFF. Those are the big 3 cons. What other con outside of that could hit the 10,000 attendee mark? Let me see. Let's look at the ones right now that are actually very close. Texas Furry Fiesta and Further Confusion. Well, I don't think FC had 10,000 attendees this year. I really don't think so. TFF, I think it has a good chance. I would like to see it hit the 10,000 mark. But honestly, I think it's still going to be these 3 cons that are going to be in the 10,000 mark for now. Unless, like, Texas Furry Fiesta has a massive turnout and the growth rate for the con goes up tremendously, I think it will still, unfortunately, be under the 10,000 mark. I'd like to see it above the 8,000 mark, though. I think it very much could do that. But yeah, actually, yeah, I'm going to... That's my prediction. Just these 3 cons will be in the 10,000s. Midwest Fur Fest and Anthrocon have pretty much solidified it. I think FWA has gotten so much good publicity with the con, and every time I've gone to it, it has just gotten better and better. There's so much to do, and it's ran so well from at least the perspective of an attendee. It was so fun when I went. I think it's going to hit over 10,000. I don't know if it's going to beat its current personal best, but I think these 3 cons will still be in the 10,000. I don't know if any other ones will shoot past 10,000. Maybe TFF, but I think it's going to stay about the same this year. That's my prediction. But for the rest of this article, we hope you found this article interesting and that you perhaps learned of cons you hadn't heard of before, or decided on a new one you'd like to attend. We also hope that this will encourage you to help out your local convention, as all this growth means every furry convention needs more help to run them. Yes. Volunteer at furry conventions. I'm saying that because I'm going to be doing it. I am very likely going to attend a few furry conventions and volunteer at them, because volunteers are absolutely needed for conventions to run. The ratio of attendees to volunteers or like staff members is moving crazily towards more attendees per staff member or a volunteer. So I do highly encourage it. volunteering, really, really cool thing to do. It's honestly a really fun experience. It doesn't take away from the convention experience really at all from what I've seen and what I'll probably be experiencing when I do volunteer for cons. But still, just want to like keep a note of it. Do recommend volunteering. It's a really cool thing to do. And furry conventions absolutely need it. I want to volunteer, but I would surely want something stationary like registration or something. I would too. I want to try something like that. And I'd also like want something as well that I could possibly either film, not the other people or the attendees registering for the con, but more so film my perspective just so I can like show people what it's like, because I'd want to do a video about it of like, I volunteered at a furry convention, this is how it turned out for me. I want to do that. I want to like do a video on it, and you know, I could only do so much or show so much from like my post commentary on it, so I want to show some like actual like, you know, what it's like volunteering, kind of like, you know, what I'm doing with this new format of video in the future, like, you know, the Rubik's Cube video. Yeah, I'll be the service chef. I'll wear one of those like little vests, those little like service vests. I don't know. Yeah, that'd be something cool. Or I'd just show up in my life jacket or something instead. It's like, Beta, supposed to wear the, you know, the service vest for the con vest. And I'm like, I am. Just write the name of the con on my life jacket and you're done. As always, if you have any data we are missing or know of any other new furry conventions or ones we have missed, please let us know. Our master convention attendance spreadsheet has been updated as well, so please enjoy going and doing your own research. And the link to it is right here, which we could bring it up at any point, but I think I pretty much have it covered for now.